Welcome to Good Life. I'm Dean Wilson. Really special program today. Redding and Andrea Wilson are with me. They've got a great story. Their journey with a really rare disease called sarcoidosis, and the foundation that they've started that over 20 years has done amazing work to help patients, to educate physicians, and to fund research. It's a fascinating story, so stay tuned. Redding and Andrea Wilson next on Good Life. Welcome to Good Life. I'm Dean Wilson. I'm so glad you've joined us. Always remember, goodlifetelevision.org is where you can see all the interviews. Since our launch this year, we're just about at 40 interviews with extremely interesting people, from students to business people to nonprofit, to people in recovery, to celebrities, it's kind of all over the map in a good way. And so goodlifetelevision.org is where you can watch all the full form interviews. So if you're seeing this on Facebook or if you're watching on TV Santa Barbara here locally, we welcome you. But we also want to encourage you can always go to goodlifetelevision.org. Special guests today, they're Wilsons. So how can we not like them? We're probably related somewhere. Redding and Andrea Wilson are with me. And I want to kind of give a little bit of an introduction to this one, if that's okay. But welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, it's great. The Wilsons have been on a journey since 1994 with a rare health challenge. In 1994, Andrea was diagnosed with multi-organ sarcoidosis. I was working on pronouncing that all morning.
You did it. You got it.
I nailed it.
Well said.
And since that diagnosis in 1994, which we're going to talk a lot about what is sarcoidosis and what you've done, but since this diagnosis and the challenges in your journey, you guys decided to do something together about this little-known health challenge, disease that people are facing, which I think is just so admirable. Redding, we were talking a little bit before we came on, about 250,000 people in the United States deal with this, and internationally maybe 1 million to 1.5 million potentially.
Correct.
So I'm just going to read real quick, and then we can kind of get into the layperson's version of what this is, how it affects people, what you're doing, and I want to talk a lot about kind of your own journey with this. But 20 years ago, you founded the Foundation for Sarcoidosis Research. Right. Sarcoidosis is an inflammatory disease characterized by the formation of granulomas, tiny clumps of inflammatory cells in one or more organs of the body. And we'll let you explain the rest in terms of how this affects people. But why don't we start with 1994?
Sure.
What happened? What were you experiencing? And I know that you had heart attack and stroke, you were trying to figure out what in the world is going on.
Right.
Tell that story.
Sure. So it actually began prior to that. Several years before that, Redding and I were married in 1990, and I had maybe a year before that, maybe 2 years, anyway, a few years before that, was presenting with shortness of breath, fatigue, some very non-specific things, and couldn't really pinpoint what the genesis of it was. And the dizziness and fatigue, was just so typical in many young women that, I sort of blew it off. And then when I went to doctors to try to find out what that was from, they said, oh, it's stress. It's nothing. It's all in your mind. And then as symptoms sort of piled up on me, again, doctors just said, that they didn't think that it was anything serious. And then finally, it was not until probably 1993 that I started fainting, and it got to the point where I really could not take a deep breath. And a very smart doctor in New York thought that it was time for me to have a chest x-ray, which nobody had thought to do, which was sort of baffling to me. And it was then that I was diagnosed with pulmonary sarcoidosis. And Redding and I had not heard of the word sarcoidosis before.
Right.
And when we went to learn about what that was, there was very little known about that disease. So that was the first time that we'd heard about it. Not much known about it, and I was treated with a round of steroids and just was sort of sent on my way.
Wow. And then this is before a heart attack or a...
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
What has before we get to the foundation and all this good work, what has been your journey over 26 years, just in terms of your health and well-being and living every day? What is this like?
So in 1994, I was finally diagnosed with sarcoidosis after, it was 8 years of being misdiagnosed? Yeah, not feeling well.
So they misdiagnosed you for 8 years?
Yes. So I was diagnosed.
And undiagnosed.
Well, I was diagnosed with, inner ear infections and Meniere's disease. They thought maybe I had a tumor at the base of my skull. And finally, it was not until a very smart doctor in New York said, we need to give you a chest x-ray. So it was Valentine's Day, and I went in for a chest x-ray and was sitting in the waiting room after I'd had the x-ray, and the radiologist came out and looked at me and looked at an older man sitting next to me, looked at the x-ray and said, I think I might have gotten your x-rays mixed up. So I thought, that's not really good.
Right.
And so took more x-rays and then came back and asked how old I was and if I was married. And I said, yes. And then she said, okay, well, good luck to you. And I thought, this is not good.
Yeah.
So I cried all the way home on the subway. By the time I got home, there was a message from her on my answering machine saying that she needed me to call her back right away. So I did, and she said, well, you either have sarcoidosis or tuberculosis. And so I knew that was definitely not good.
Did you know what it was, sarcoidosis?
No idea. No idea.
Yeah. I'd never heard of it.
I looked it up in the Merck manual, and there were maybe 2 or 3 sentences about it. And so I think it was 3 days later, I had a bronchoscopy to diagnose what it was. And it was definitely sarcoid. And I think you said, as we were leaving the hospital after having the bronchoscopy, you said that you were thinking about the seriousness of it, thinking, God, what would I say at her funeral?
Oh.
But that didn't happen. I'm still here.
Yeah.
And so I started on a 9-month round of prednisone. And then afterwards, our doctor there said that if we wanted to start a family, that we should go ahead and sort of tee things up. So we did. And looking back on things then, I think she realized how, excuse me, how, sort of how tough things would or could get.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, so that's amazing. I want to get back to that. Redding, before we came on, you were kind of explaining to me in layperson's terms what this is.
Yeah.
So for somebody like me, never heard of sarcoidosis. Again, 250,000 people or so may suffer from this in the United States. Right. 1 million to 1.5 million internationally. But for the layperson, what is it?
Sure. Well, orphan disease, clearly, because of the population numbers. But what they believe is most patients inhale some antigen into their lungs. The immune system responds to that antigen, gets rid of the antigen, but then never turns itself off. So the immune system is attacking something in an organ that's not there. And in that process is creating granulomas and fibrosis of the tissue. And so that fibrosis and the granulomas interrupt the function of that organ. So if it's in your heart, for example, it might mess up the electrical conduction system of your heart, and you could have arrhythmias or a cardiac attack. If it's in your lungs, you lose lung capacity. If it's in your brain, you may have other implications with the conduction of your functioning brain. And so it really is kind of insidious in a lot of ways. but it's inflammation. At its core, it's inflammation in the body caused by something and the immune system's inability to regulate itself and turn itself back off. And so when they treat patients like Andrea, the very first thing they do is typically give them a very high dose of steroids, prednisone, frontline defense, and prednisone has its own side effects, and over long periods of time, bad side effects. And they see if they can kind of regulate it that way. But then a lot of patients will progress and it will extend, and so they need to look for other ways to treat it. And today, there are other drugs, chemotherapeutics, for example, that are being used to treat some of the immune system responses that they don't get a response to with prednisone. So they're trying new things, but bottom line, there's no new drug that's ever been developed for this disease. There's no cure for the disease. And so patients just have to live with whatever symptoms and effects of the symptoms they have.
And you have no idea what they're going to be.
No.
I mean,
everybody's different.
Everybody's different.
Right.
So it just depends on where it goes in the body,
Right.
which organs it affects.
Yeah. We sort of joke that it's sort of like whack-a-mole.
Right.
You know, we sort of treat what symptom arises. So,
Right.
for instance, I was having heart palpitations after our daughter was born. And so I thought, God, what in the world is happening? Why am I getting so heartbeaty? And so obviously stopped coffee, stopped, anything like that. And lo and behold, I called my doctor. We had moved to another city after New York. Called my doctor there and said, I feel shortness of breath and I am having, heartbeats. And the doctor there said, you're fine. And I thought, no, not this again.
Right.
There really is something wrong. No, you're fine. And one day I was out walking her in a jog stroller and I bent down to say something to her and I kept on going and passed out. And apparently that was a heart attack.
Oh my gosh.
So then I was kind of in a whole new category. And so heart, lungs then. And so then after that, I was just petrified thinking, oh my God, what else now?
So it's like these mini little things within the big thing.
Right.
So all of a sudden you're dealing with a heart issue because of sarcoidosis.
Right.
Then you can be dealing with a brain issue or a lung issue.
Right.
And so
Right.
that's amazing.
Some of the constants, fatigue, shortness of breath, night sweats. A lot of patients have ocular issues. Those are
Skin.
some skin. You may see lesions on the skin
I have
in
lesions.
very severe cases. And women more often than men. Women aged 20 to 40 mostly, but can be
African-Americans.
African Americans in the U.S. much more severely affected than Caucasians. High rates of incidence in Japan, Scandinavia, women of Irish descent. There's no common thread that anyone's been able to put together. After 9/11 in New York City, a number of firefighters began to present with, or first responders present with sarcoidosis. Incidences where, a pool and spray that was coming out of a public pool, and all of a sudden a bunch of lifeguards present with sarcoidosis. So
Firefighters, people whose jobs
right,
keep them in a tight community.
or something that they may have inhaled.
So it's something is inhaled.
Inhaled or ingested, they think.
That's how you
That
get it.
triggers that immune system response.
So nobody's born with this.
You have a genetic predisposition potentially to the response that your immune system creates, and they have done studies, extensive studies sponsored by the NHI that show it's in families. Andrea's uncle had a more minor version of sarcoidosis when he was younger, so we actually learned that long after Andrea had been diagnosed it with over a dinner. He's like, oh, I think I had sarcoid way back when somebody put a finger on it. But again, so a lot of mysteries that have never been answered.
And so one of the things that was interesting to me, because I think about this as I look at you, you don't look sick. And I was reading about that's one of the dynamics of this thing, that people don't necessarily look sick.
Right.
But then you're on this private roller coaster of, that's an interesting thing.
Right. And that is it's one of those good bad things
Right.
for everyone with sarcoid. And so trying to get diagnosed my story of, not being diagnosed for 8 years is so common with sarcoid people.
Because they can't figure it out.
Right. Or they think
or
you're
they
not.
don't know.
Right.
Or they think you're just
you're
freaking
nuts.
out.
Right.
Exactly.
They think, oh God,
Right.
another
Drama.
one of those.
Right.
Exactly.
And that's where we've lost a number of the cardiac patients because they don't present with sarcoidosis, and so they may be very active. We knew of many that were very active people, and all of a sudden in the middle of that activity, tennis or soccer or whatever they did, hockey, a couple sportscasters we knew of, they would just AFib and die because no one knew that there was sarcoid in the lining of their heart that was creating issues with the mechanics of their electric system.
So are these prominent people that have died of it?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Darian Chapman was a very noted sportscaster in Chicago. That's one of the reasons we connected with NBC TV in Chicago. Yeah. They've been super helpful to us. The general manager there embraced us. That's how we met Bill Russell and other people who fought this disease. And so they helped with the publicity, and when we were getting the foundation off the ground, really kind of bringing some awareness, helping us bring awareness to the disease. That's a big part of it.
Broadcaster, he died of this.
He did.
And he never knew he had it.
Nope.
He did not.
So it was on autopsy that when they did the autopsy, they found out that that's what it was. And so.
Wow. So I want to talk about what you've done here, and because I think it's amazing. So in 1999-2000 time frame, about 20 years ago, the Wilsons founded the Foundation for Sarcoidosis Research. It's based in Chicago. There's a staff. There's a board of directors. They raise money. They do great work. If you're interested in seeing more about it, you can go to stopsarcoidosis.org. I'm not going to spell it, but just figure it out. Stopsarcoidosis.org. This is based in Chicago. It's an amazing organization, and yeah, so the basketball great Bill Russell has suffered from this, and what I think is incredible about this is I think it'd be real easy for somebody who's suffering or in the middle of this mess to just focus on yourself, because that would be understandable. But what you guys have done, as you've said, you're turning this into something that is a blessing for other people, serving other people, maybe bringing solutions, answers, research. Millions of dollars you guys have raised to go to research. Last I saw was somewhere around $5 million or something to go towards research. But talk about, and Redding, you're serving as interim executive director as we sit here.
Yep.
You're both on the board.
Yep.
Obviously you're founders. What is if you had to give kind of the elevator speech about the vision for FSR, what is it?
So small and mighty. Obviously, to develop new drug treatments takes an awful lot of time and an awful lot of money. And we would like to have better treatments. We'd like to see new treatments in our lifetime, or maybe a potential curative treatment. And so part of what the mission of FSR is to do is help companies that want to develop new compounds for sarcoidosis, help them access patients, help them come into the space and make it easy for them to do research that may lead to a phase 1, a phase 2, a phase 3 trial that ultimately develops a drug. Educate patients, make patients aware. I mean, part of our odyssey was we didn't know. We didn't know what questions to ask. We didn't know what doctors to go visit. We didn't know how and what forms of treatment worked. So how do you bring awareness to patients about the disease, how to identify it, and then the best way to treat it?
Yeah.
Once you figured out the best way to treat it, who are the clinicians and doctors that treat the most patients and hence may have the most experience? Right. So we try to bring a lot of that information to the table through our website, through patient education forums, through pamphlets, through whatever mechanism. We just, videos are a big thing now, obviously, in the time of COVID. So we're doing webinars and video appeals and lots of things via our website that are interactive. We're having a virtual conference on September 22nd for patients and on November 14. So anybody can come via their computer, access all the knowledge base that we have, ask questions, go to booths, all that kind of creative stuff that's happening in this world today, and participate and get involved and get answers, because hopefully a smarter patient is going to be a healthier patient at the end of the day.
And I read in the foundation kind of has 3 areas of focus, it seemed like: patients, physicians, and research.
That's
Did I
right.
get that right?
That's right.
So if somebody's watching this right now in Lincoln, Nebraska, and they've got it, if they go to your website and then start to join they could start to get further educated
Absolutely.
Yes.
on what to do.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And you also struck upon something very important too, which is we also try to educate physicians who don't know much about sarcoid. That was something else that that was a huge stumbling block for me.
Right.
And the physicians that I saw, while they did want to help, they didn't know much about sarcoidosis,
Right.
and it's just something that they didn't know about, and they hadn't learned about in med school. And so we're also trying to groom some of those younger not young investigators, but some of the younger doctors, and we're trying to encourage them to go into the sarcoidosis field.
Yeah.
So it's so exciting for us when we see some of those young pulmonologists who want to devote their lives to sarcoidosis. I mean, it's just it's a dream for us.
So that young crop of smart people with a lot of money, that's probably the path to a cure?
You would hope so, yeah, because obviously you think about cancer or a big disease that has a lot of funding, and if you're a doctor that wants to pursue a career, you may have a very easy path in cancer to pursue that career, research and grants and all the monies that flow into that space. Sarcoid is a different animal, so how do you develop a career in sarcoidosis? And so we're trying to help bridge that gap, if you will, by bringing funding, whether it's a fellowship or an early investigator grant that encourages them to come into the space and gives them a bit of a runway to begin to develop their research to the point that they could take that research to the NHLBI, the U.S. government, and say, hey, I need major funding, R01 funding for this grant idea I have that I've developed with funding from FSR. And so in that sense, we're giving them a springboard to larger money, a launch pad.
We're teeing them up.
Hopefully all of this creates a snowball effect that, again, pulls people into the space, smart people that want to build a career and develop new ideas and hopefully treatments for patients.
We're beginning to see a lot of that, some of it. We get excited if we even see, 3 of these young, bright minds in it. So
So
we'll do anything for that.
So physicians and patients, you have resources for physicians, resources for patients.
We do.
And then you have a research arm. I want to talk about the suffering you've endured for 26 years at different levels, and you've had heart attack, stroke. You don't know what your day is going to look like. And here I have this soft spot for people who've been through stuff. So this is funny.
I do too.
We're sitting here in my backyard. You came into my house to get back here, and we have a brain-injured daughter. She had a stroke in the womb, 2/3 of her brain. She wasn't supposed to live. It's a miracle. She's 18 now, fluent in Spanish. Most joyful person I know.
She is a joy.
She's a joy. She's literally probably the greatest person I've ever known in my life.
Yep, I can see that.
Not mad about yesterday. Doesn't hold a grudge. Not worried about tomorrow. Happy to see you, whether
She's
you're
wonderful.
the bagger at the grocery store or the President of the United States, same thing. So anyway, I could talk about her for a long time. But when you walked through her house,
awesome.
you stopped and you talked to her for a little bit, and then she crawled back into our room and told us all about you. And my wife saw it, and so my wife came out and she says, "Boy, that lady you're having on the program sure is nice." And I said, "She's probably nice because she suffered a lot." And I found that people who go through stuff where they suffer, there's something that happens where they're tenderized maybe, and the perspective is different.
Yes.
where
I
you
agree.
stop and notice the brain injured child on the way in when most people just blow by.
Right.
Has this affected your life in a good way?
Oh, yes.
Talk about
Without
that.
a doubt. It absolutely has. I mean, at the risk of sounding like a bumper sticker, I really am truly thankful for every day.
Yeah,
I am so thankful for that orange tree right there.
right.
The mountains that it just puts everything right here.
Isn't that
And I know
amazing?
you know what I mean.
Right, yeah.
And I relate so much to the patients. I'm so thankful to all of the doctors.
Yeah,
You know, if ever I had a moment of wondering what I was going to do, you know, as a job, as a career, as whatever, it's gone.
yeah,
You know, I see other people, you know, wringing their hands and thinking, oh God, what am I going to do? What am I going to, you
Right.
know, who am I going to be? Where am I? How am I going to find myself?
that ship
I've
has
fallen
sailed.
into that.
Right.
That ship has sailed.
Yeah, and you know
I get
when
it.
we have had
Right.
the fires, the floods, the displacements, we were evacuated 8 times up here, and
You
people
live
say,
nearby here.
Yeah.
and people say, oh my God, wasn't that terrible? Wasn't that? And I said, no, you know, it actually was kind of fun. I
Right.
learned how to pack quickly, learned what mattered.
Right.
Right.
Got
but-
to see parts of the state we hadn't been to. yet.
Exactly. We drove up and down that coast.
Isn't that little perspective change?
Yeah.
It's been huge, and
It's
there
amazing.
Yeah, and there were times when I thought I really was not supposed to be here, but I am, and I'm enjoying every single damn moment,
Right.
moment.
I love it. I love it.
yeah.
It's a gift. Today's a gift.
It is a gift, and I really get that. And the people that we appreciate the most are those people who feel that same way.
Right, right.
So it's all right here.
Yeah. You're
Yeah.
going to love my daughter.
I do already.
Every day is the greatest. This is the best day ever. Every day. She calls me about 8 times a day.
Oh.
Every day is the best day ever. In the morning, she is so happy to see you.
Aw.
It's like you've never met.
Yeah.
Every day. And I've learned so much about life
Yeah.
from her.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And people that meet her, they're like, just because it's very simple.
Yeah.
I mean, we want to fight about politics on Facebook. I mean, are you
Right.
kidding?
Yeah, I know.
Like, just
Who's got the time?
Forget it.
Yeah.
Right. I don't have the bandwidth. I mean, there's too much math involved. You know.
Right. Right.
Exactly.
It's, no thanks.
Yeah.
But it's
No,
a
I get that.
perspective shift.
Right.
So I admire you both for number one, because of what you've been through and your perseverance. Number two, you've done something
you.
big here to help other people that's going to outlast you.
We hope so.
And I think it'll make a big impact.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But it's really special to meet you.
Thank you.
Much.
So
I
thanks
think
for coming.
I think it's harder on the people around me
Yeah.
to deal with what's been going on. I really do. I think it's been
Yeah.
much harder on Reading.
Yeah.
I think it was hard on my parents. I think it probably sent them to an early grave.
Oh, yeah.
I really do.
Yeah.
And being on both sides of the fence. I mean, my best friend passed away from cancer,
Oh, really?
and being with her through a lot of her treatments. She was so happy. She was so smart, beautiful, just a beautiful creature inside and out. I mean, I was so devastated when she passed away, and I still miss her so much.
But you gave her a lot of joy and empathy and understanding because of the patient experience, I think, and
Right.
Right,
knowing how, being able to put yourself in other people's shoes.
right. But still, it scoops your soul out, and
Yeah.
But being a patient, I feel like I'm in charge of me, and I can do it. But that still, like that, just losing her has been
Yeah.
so tough.
Life is a gift.
Yeah, it is.
Life is a gift.
Mm-hmm.
I got the wristband.
You too.
There we go.
That's right. Fight sarcoidosis.
StopSarcoidosis.org.
Here we go.
If you can figure out how to spell it, you'll be there.
Exactly.
You guys, thanks for coming.
Thank you so
really
much
a
for
pleasure
having
to
us.
be
Really
here.
special.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, life is a gift. So wherever you are, don't forget that. It's good perspective. We'll see you next time.